Hi there, I'm Lacey. And yes, my mother slapped me right at my own wedding. Why? Because I refused to hand over my $50,000 wedding fund to my brother. But that wasn't the beginning, and it sure wasn't the worst of it. They faked emails, spread rumors, even tried to destroy my job, my relationship, everything. I kept asking myself, how far will your own family go to break you, just to protect the one who keeps failing? And when the truth finally hit me, it wasn't just betrayal, it was a lifetime of being the backup plan. The breeze carried the scent of lavender and freshly turned soil as I stepped onto the cobbled patio of the vineyard. Strings of warm lights hung above us like stars pinned in place, casting a golden hue over the rustic tables and rows of guests holding glasses of wine. Everything about that afternoon had felt surreal. The flowers, the laughter, the way Dorian looked at me like I was the only woman in the world. I'd always imagined my engagement party would be intimate, sweet, maybe even a little chaotic with all the family personalities in one place. But I never imagined it would be the moment everything started unraveling. Dorian was across the patio, talking to my cousin Drew near the bar. He looked effortlessly put together, sleeves rolled up, glass in hand, smiling at something Drew had just said. I smiled too, watching him. He made me feel safe, real. Like this life we were building together had solid ground beneath it. My mother, Wanda, was making the rounds. She wore her usual pastel suit, the kind that screamed Southern matriarch with something to prove, and carried a smile that had fooled strangers for decades. My father, Marvin, stood nearby as her silent shadow, present, but never interfering. I had barely finished my sparkling water when I heard the clinking of a spoon against glass. Wanda stood near the center of the gathering, a wineglass raised delicately in her left hand. "Can I have everyone's attention for a moment?" she asked sweetly, but her tone carried the weight of something more. The crowd quieted. Dorian stepped back toward me. I straightened my spine. "I just want to say how proud Marvin and I are of our daughter," she began, gesturing toward me. "Lacey, you've grown into a thoughtful, accomplished woman. Dorian, we're thrilled to welcome you into the family." A warm round of applause followed. A few people tapped their glasses for a kiss, which Dorian and I obliged with a small chuckle. But then Wanda raised her hand again. "And, while we're on the topic of weddings," she continued, her voice taking on a slightly different texture, "there's something important we've been thinking about as a family." My heart sank, just a hair. I didn't know what was coming, but the way she looked at me made my palms cold. "As you all know," she said, "Lacey has had a $50,000 fund set aside for her wedding since she was 17, a gift from Marvin and me." People nodded. I caught a few raised eyebrows. "But Kendrick's getting married next year too," she added, shifting the direction of the spotlight with expert ease. "And unlike Lacey, he's had some real setbacks. School debt, business troubles. Life hasn't exactly been kind." She paused, then smiled, a smile too polished to be sincere. "So, Marvin and I have decided to redistribute the wedding fund. To make things fair, Kendrick will receive half." The clapping stopped. You could hear the wine settling in the glasses. I didn't move at first. I didn't even blink. I looked at her. Then at Kendrick, who stood a few feet away, trying to look modest but failing miserably behind that smug little smirk he always wore when he got his way. I took a slow breath, then spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "No." Some people chuckled nervously, thinking maybe I was playing along. But I wasn't. "My wedding fund is mine. You gave it to me when I was 17. I've planned responsibly. I've never asked for more. I'm not sharing it." Wanda's smile tightened. Marvin, of course, said nothing. Kendrick made a dramatic shrug, like, "What's the big deal?" Wanda stepped forward, wineglass still in hand. "We thought you'd be more understanding," she said, her voice dropping low enough for only those nearest to hear. "You always had more than him. You should know when it's time to give back." "Sharing isn't the same as being robbed," I said, keeping my voice level. "Especially when it's disguised as generosity." Her jaw clenched slightly. Then she smiled again, this time as if warning me with her teeth. After a few murmurs and awkward coughs, the crowd slowly returned to conversation. But the energy had shifted. The celebration had thinned. Later, after the toast, I found myself near the pergola at the edge of the venue. The vines curled around the beams, their new green shoots reaching toward the sky like they hadn't just been scorched by my mother's brand of affection. Wanda found me again, this time alone. "You should think about postponing the wedding," she said softly but not kindly, "until we sort all this out as a family." "Postpone it?" I blinked. "Because Kendrick's broke?" "Because it would show maturity. Grace, character." "I've already shown character. I budgeted, I saved. I didn't blow mine on bad investments and rented Instagram models." Her nostrils flared, but she didn't lose composure. "You're acting like this day is only about you." I let out a short laugh. "That's because it is, Mom. It's my engagement party. Or at least it was." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Kendrick watching us. He raised a glass as if to say cheers, then turned back to schmooze a few cousins. I didn't have to say another word. I walked past my mother and back into the crowd, though I felt like I was walking into a battlefield instead of a celebration. The rest of the night passed in a haze. I smiled where I needed to, nodded through conversations, posed for photos I never wanted to look at again. By the time we got home, I was drained. I sat on the edge of our bed, pulled out my wedding planning journal, and opened it to a fresh page. Nothing came. Not a single idea. Not a venue note or budget tweak or timeline revision. I stared at the page, then shut the book. This wasn't how it was supposed to feel. "This is my wedding," I whispered to the dark room, "but it already feels like a hostage negotiation." Morning light slipped through the curtains, landing in stripes across the end of our bed. I hadn't slept well. The weight of the previous evening pressed down on me like a second blanket. Thick, suffocating. The silence in the room wasn't peaceful. It was loaded. I lay there for a few more minutes, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan as it rotated slowly overhead. Dorian stirred beside me, already halfway to sitting up. "You okay?" he asked gently, voice still gravelly with sleep. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." He didn't push. He rarely did when he sensed I needed space. That's one of the things I appreciated most about him. He wasn't a fixer. He was a listener. And sometimes that's more powerful. I shuffled out of bed and padded to the kitchen. The scent of coffee was already brewing, rich and grounding. He had started it for me, a small act of love, but this morning it felt monumental. As I poured my cup, my phone buzzed on the counter. Then again, and again. The first was from my Aunt Monica. "He's your brother, Lacey. You know what he's been through. Maybe it's time to think bigger than just yourself." Then a message from a cousin I barely spoke to. "Wow, cold move at your party. Family comes first, remember?" And another, this one from someone I didn't even recognize right away. "He would have done it for you. Don't let money break the family." I set the phone down and pushed my cup away, appetite gone. I hadn't even posted anything, not a word. But the group chats and family texts were buzzing like a hive, and I was the wasp they'd decided to swat. Dorian stepped into the kitchen, handed me a slice of toast I hadn't asked for. "Wanda's working the phones, huh?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "She doesn't waste time." He leaned against the counter. "Let me guess. Kendrick's the underdog, you're the villain." "I guess that makes you the enabler," I said, trying to smile, but my lips barely cooperated. 2 days passed with little relief. I tried to distract myself, work, planning, laundry, even alphabetizing the spice rack. Nothing worked. The silence between me and my family had only deepened, except for the noise they were generating behind my back. On the third morning, I had an appointment at a boutique downtown to try on a dress I'd secretly loved more than the one I'd already chosen. It was quieter than the others, tucked in an old brick building with soft lighting and polished wood floors. A place that made you feel like you were about to say yes to more than just a gown. I slipped into the ivory dress, lace wrapping around my shoulders like a whisper. As I turned in front of the mirror, admiring the silhouette, the assistant knocked gently on the dressing room door. "Miss Gellner?" she said. "There's a woman here asking for you. She says she's your mother, said it's urgent." My breath caught for half a second. "Send her back," I said, voice steady, "but I'm not changing." Wanda walked in less than a minute later, composed but clearly performing. "Oh, honey," she breathed, looking me up and down. "You look beautiful. That dress suits you. I didn't respond. She paused, then stepped closer. I came to talk, that's all. I just think we need to clear the air. There's nothing unclear, I said. You tried to take my money in front of 50 people. She winced. You always make things sound worse than they are. Before I could respond, her face changed. Her hand moved to her chest. She wobbled slightly. Mom? She staggered back, clutching her chest dramatically, eyes fluttering. I can't breathe. One of the assistants rushed in, calling for help. Another grabbed a chair. Wanda let herself fall into it, gasping. Call 911, she whispered. Please. I didn't move. I just watched, cold rising in my stomach. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They checked her vitals, ran through questions. One of them turned to me. She's stable, heart rate's fine, no signs of arrhythmia. She might be under stress. She always is, I muttered. They left soon after. Wanda insisted she didn't need to go to the hospital, just needed to sit a while. When the staff cleared out, I leaned in and whispered low. You staged that. Her eyes flicked up, lips barely parting. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence. She stood slowly. You used to care when I was hurting. I used to believe it was real. She smoothed her jacket and walked out of the boutique without another word. I stayed behind, numb. The assistant offered me a glass of water, which I accepted, still dressed in that once perfect gown. That evening, I received a call from the boutique manager. Hi, Lacey, she said carefully. Just wanted to confirm. Did you want to cancel your fittings and transfer your deposit? I blinked. What? No, I never said that. Oh, well, someone claiming to be your mother made the request right after the ambulance left. We thought it was strange, but didn't want to overstep. She paused. She also suggested your stress level made you unfit to finalize anything right now. I felt the sting like a slap across the face. She had no right, I said. Please reinstate everything, and if she contacts you again, call me first, always. Of course, she said gently. You're our bride. Only you. After hanging up, I dropped my phone on the couch and sat still for a long time. I didn't cry. Not yet. That night, I pulled an old photo out from the back of my desk drawer. Me and Kendrick, maybe 16 and 14. His arm looped around my shoulder, both of us smiling into the camera. But even then, my smile had never quite reached my eyes. I set the photo down gently on the edge of my desk, letting my fingers linger just a second longer than necessary. There was a time, brief, blurry, when I believed Kendrick and I could have been close. But looking at that photo now, all I could think about was how long I'd been told to pretend. It was just past 10 p.m., and Dorian had already gone to bed. I stayed in the office, surrounded by old boxes we hadn't yet unpacked since moving into our townhouse. Somewhere in one of them, I remembered, were the original bank documents, the ones that showed when the wedding fund had been created. I dug them out. The pages were yellowing at the edges, but the ink was clear. 2 custodial accounts, one for Kendrick, one for me. Set up when I was 17 and he was 15. Same starting balance, same terms. But only one of us had something left. I sat on the floor, the weight of that realization heavier now than it had been then. I remembered the way my parents used to say, "It's yours to use wisely when the time comes." I took that to heart. I chose a state university, worked part-time, earned scholarships. I spent modestly. I planned. Kendrick didn't. He opted for a small private school in Phoenix, dropped out in under 2 years, spent the rest on a custom sneaker business. Bought gear, booked photographers, threw a launch party at a rooftop bar in Scottsdale. It flopped in 6 months. When I asked once what happened to his fund, my dad looked up from his paper and muttered, "It's not something we talk about, honey. He's figuring it out. Figuring it out." That was always the excuse. The phrase that was supposed to explain away recklessness and entitlement. I had heard it since we were kids. The next morning, I got a notification on my phone, a tag on someone's Instagram story. I didn't recognize the username right away, but I tapped anyway. It was Kendrick. On a boat. Lake Havasu. Clear blue water in the background, red Solo cups stacked on a floating cooler, and Kendrick laughing, shirtless, his arm around some guy I'd never seen. In the next frame, he toasted with a group of friends. Shout out to Kendrick for renting this beast! One guy yelled into the camera. My stomach twisted. It wasn't even jealousy. It was nausea. How easily he could play broke one day and flex the next. In another story, he wore Gucci slides, the kind that cost more than my wedding veil, and oversized black shades I recognized from a luxury pop-up I'd seen months ago. At the same time, I scrolled up to read his most recent text to me. We're still waiting on your response about the wedding fund. Be decent. Be decent. I stared at the words for a full minute before locking my screen and setting the phone down face first. My hands were trembling. But it wasn't rage, not exactly. It was clarity, like stepping into a room I hadn't realized was filled with smoke. By noon, I had already pulled up every screenshot, receipt, and message I had. I opened a new folder titled Fund War and started documenting everything. That afternoon, I got a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Ryan. We'd met briefly in college, but he was really Kendrick's friend. I hesitated before opening it. Hey, Lacey, I know this is random, but I saw your brother's IG. Just thought you should know. He still owes me $1,200. I blinked, reading it again. Said he needed help buying inventory for some sneaker thing. Promised to pay me back double. That was almost 2 years ago. I replied simply, "Thank you for telling me." A moment later, he sent a voice note. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. His voice was calm but bitter. Your brother's been playing everyone for years, including your parents. Look, I get it. You want to believe people grow, but he's not broke. He's addicted to looking like a winner. The truth rang so loud I almost dropped the phone. That night, I sat at the kitchen counter, laptop open, phone beside me, documents spread out. I didn't touch my wine. I barely touched dinner. I watched Kendrick's story loop again, his laugh echoing through the speaker. I watched it not with fury, but with a strange sense of relief. Because now I knew. This wasn't just a difference in choices. It wasn't about hard luck or bad timing. It was about who Kendrick chose to be, and who my parents chose to protect. This isn't some one-time misunderstanding, I whispered to myself. This is who he is, and they all knew it. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the kitchen as I stared at my laptop screen. I hadn't moved in almost 20 minutes. My dinner sat untouched beside me, grilled salmon and steamed vegetables Dorian had brought home, trying to cheer me up. But I couldn't bring myself to lift the fork. A notification buzzed on my phone, followed by another. My stomach tensed as I reached for it. The first was a voicemail from my cousin Melissa. Hey, Lacey, I'm so sorry. I heard about you and Dorian. I had no idea he cheated. If you want to talk, I'm here. My breath caught halfway through the message. Cheated? The second notification was a text from another friend. He seemed so loyal. I hope you're okay. If you need anything, just say the word. I sat up straighter, heat rising to my cheeks. I immediately called Melissa. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, she said cautiously. What did you hear exactly? I asked. She paused. Your mom called me yesterday. She said the wedding was off, that Dorian had been unfaithful, and you were trying to handle it privately. That's a lie, I said flatly. A complete lie. Melissa hesitated. She sounded pretty upset. I just thought, well, I didn't know what to think. I thanked her and hung up. My pulse was racing. I opened my email, and there it was. Several unread messages from acquaintances and coworkers. Subject lines like, checking in on you. Hearts with you. Sorry to hear. I opened one from my old roommate Lauren. I just got your wedding cancellation. Didn't see that coming, but I'm proud of you for prioritizing your healing. I hadn't sent anything. Then I saw it. The sender's email looked like mine, but it wasn't. One extra letter. A domain swap. It was a fake account, created to look real. The message read, Dear friends and family, due to recent events and the need for personal healing, Dorian and I have decided to postpone the wedding. Thank you for your understanding. It was signed with my full name. My throat tightened. This wasn't just petty sabotage anymore. They weren't just trying to get the money. They were trying to erase my narrative, rewrite my life. I texted Dorian, We need to talk when you're home. Urgent. Sleep didn't come that night. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was Wanda's carefully constructed smile, Kendrick's smug expression behind designer sunglasses, and now this, an invisible knife aimed directly at my credibility. By morning, I had barely eaten half a banana before heading to the office. My boss, Sarah, intercepted me near the elevator. "Can we talk for a second?" she asked, gently but firmly. We stepped into her office. She closed the door. "We received something concerning," she began, sliding a printout across the desk. It was a screenshot of an anonymous email with a link to a video, grainy footage of someone who looked like me in a compromising scene with a man I'd never seen before. The background was dim, the face unclear, but the voice, my voice, had been crudely mimicked. "We know it's not you," Sarah said quickly, trying to reassure me, "but it was sent to 5 people, including HR. My hands turned ice cold. The subject line was, "Know who you're working with," she added. "We're handling it discreetly, but I thought you should know." I nodded, though my throat was too tight to speak. An hour later, I left early. I told HR I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't a lie. As I sat in the driver's seat of my car, parked behind the office, I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. "They're not coming after the wedding anymore," I whispered aloud. "They're coming after me." I got home before Dorian. I changed into a hoodie and curled up on the back porch, the Arizona air unusually cool for late spring. When he walked through the sliding door, I didn't say anything. I just handed him my phone. He scrolled through the emails, then watched the video, his jaw tightening, his breathing shallow. "This is," he started, then stopped. "This is criminal." "Do you believe me?" I asked, quieter than I meant to. "I never stopped," he replied. He set the phone down, pulled me into his chest, and held me there until the shaking in my hands stopped. For a while, we didn't speak. "They want to ruin me before I even get to the altar," I said finally. But the moment the words left my lips, something inside me shifted. I was done playing nice. I was done hoping someone else would fix it. If they wanted a war, they were about to learn what I looked like in armor. The next morning began quiet, too quiet. Dorian had already left for work, and the house felt unusually still. I stood in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold 15 minutes ago. I didn't move. I just stared out the window, watching a hummingbird hover near the patio feeder, fluttering, restless, trying to hold still, the same way I felt inside. I picked up my phone and opened my contact list. My thumb hovered over Kendrick's name. I hadn't spoken to him directly in months, not since before the engagement party. Every fight, every manipulation had filtered through my parents. But that day, something shifted. I wasn't going to wait for someone else to protect me anymore. I was done being polite. I pressed call. It rang 4 times, then voicemail. I didn't hang up. I took a breath and said, "If you want to be a man, Kendrick, pick up your phone." Then I ended the call and waited. An hour later, my phone lit up. He was calling. I picked up and said nothing. "What's up, big sis?" he said, all faux charm. "Missed me?" I kept my voice even. "I know about the fake email, the video, the deepfake, the messages you or someone close to you sent to my coworkers. I know everything." He laughed, short, sharp. "You think I have time to create fake videos? You're giving me a little too much credit." "Don't lie, Kendrick. I've already talked to people. You were sloppy." "What people?" "Alicia, ring a bell?" I asked. She said you did the same thing to her. Fake messages, threats, tried to ruin her reputation when she dumped you. He went silent. A long pause followed. I didn't wait for him to speak. "I've got the video files, IP logs, screenshots. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. If you thought you could play me like one of your frat buddies, you chose the wrong target." Still, he said nothing. I lowered my voice. "Next time you try to ruin someone, Kendrick, pick a target who's dumber than you." Then I hung up. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I felt like I'd finally stood up in a room full of people who'd spent years telling me to sit down. I turned to my laptop and opened a new email. This time it was for Wanda and Marvin. No CC, no emotional preamble. Just facts. Subject, final notice. If either of you contacts anyone in my life again, co-workers, friends, extended family, I will pursue legal action. I have the recordings, the digital trail, the witnesses. You get one chance to stop. Use it wisely. I hit send. No hesitation, no tremble in my fingers. The reply never came, but the silence, it was deafening and revealing. I forwarded the email to Kaylin, my attorney. Within minutes, she replied, "That was strong. You're protecting your life, not just your money." She was right. I wasn't just safeguarding a wedding or a bank account. I was reclaiming my dignity, my narrative, my peace. Later that week, Dorian and I met with our wedding planner, Jocelyn. Her studio smelled like eucalyptus and paper. The whiteboards were filled with seating charts and flower combinations, but we didn't waste time on aesthetics. "Cut Kendrick, Wanda, and Marvin from the guest list," I told her. She blinked. "All of them?" "No backdoor access, not even the parking lot, I'm serious." She nodded, scribbling notes. "We'll inform security. Want me to circulate photos to the team?" "Yes," I said. "Circulate everything." Dorian added calmly, "If they show up, escort them out immediately. No second chances." Jocelyn hesitated again. "Are you absolutely sure?" I met her eyes. "If they come near me again, they'll regret it." We finalized everything. The new entrance list, security arrangements, code words for staff. As we wrapped up, I glanced down at my wedding binder. The glossy cover reflected my face, stern, clear-eyed, and so far from the daughter my parents once molded. "They've mistaken my silence for submission," I said quietly. Dorian placed his hand over mine. "Not anymore." I looked at the schedule, the RSVP list, the caterer details. No fear, no guilt, no doubt. They'll see who I really am. The following Monday started like any other. I was in the middle of reviewing a vendor invoice when my phone buzzed on the desk. It was Dorian, not a text, a call. I answered immediately. "Everything okay?" He didn't respond right away. Then, "You need to come to my office. Now." His tone wasn't sharp. It wasn't panicked. It was cold, like something had been drained from him. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and was in the car within minutes. His office wasn't far, just 15 minutes across town. But every red light felt like an hour. When I arrived, he met me at the front lobby. He looked calm on the surface, but I saw it in his eyes. Something had cracked. He handed me a manila envelope, already opened. "It came addressed to you. Here." Inside were 5 printed stills, screenshots from the fake video Kendrick had circulated. Grainy, low res, but enough to trigger suspicion in anyone not looking closely. And on top of them, a handwritten note. "Are you sure she's the one?" I stared at the paper like it might catch fire in my hands. "Who opened it?" I asked. "My manager saw it first. It was dropped off by courier before I got in." Humiliation didn't even register. Not anymore. It had evolved. What I felt now wasn't shame. It was rage, pure, blistering rage. "They're not just trying to humiliate me," I said slowly. "This is warfare, psychological warfare." Dorian nodded. "I told my manager the whole story. They believe us. But this is insane." "No," I corrected. "This is criminal." I left Dorian's office without saying much more. I needed space to think, to plan. By the time I got home, I was already dialing Kaylin Voss. She answered after 2 rings. "I've got something new," I said, pacing the living room floor. It was sent directly to Dorian's office, with a note. "Good," she replied. "That's enough. We'll escalate." We filed the paperwork that same day. A formal cease and desist to Kendrick Gellner, included in it civil harassment language, digital stalking reference, and potential defamation charges, all legal tools locked and loaded. "He'll laugh at first," Kaylin said, scanning the draft. "But he won't laugh when a court summons shows up in his inbox." "I don't care if he laughs," I said. "I care that it ends." We started organizing a timeline. Every email, every fake message, every printed threat. I built a digital file, labeled each entry, attached screenshots, audio, metadata logs. "If this goes public," I told Kaylin, "we do it on our terms. Full story, full context." "Truth with receipts is bulletproof," she said. It was the first thing anyone had said to me in days that made me smile. That night I sat alone on the patio, phone in hand. My thumb hovered over a number I hadn't called in weeks, my father's. After a moment of hesitation, I tapped call. He answered on the second ring. "Hi, sweetheart." His voice was softer than I remembered, hesitant. I need to ask you something, I said. Why are you letting this happen? A pause. I didn't think it would go this far, he said eventually. It already has. It's beyond far. They tried to get me fired. They sent garbage to Dorian's job. He sighed. Your mother's just trying to protect Kendrick. No, she's not. She's trying to silence me to protect herself from admitting what she's enabled. I held my breath. You raised me better than this. And yet, here we are. He said nothing. I still love you, I said softly. But I love myself more now. And I ended the call. I didn't cry. I didn't second guess it. I just sat there for a while, watching the last rays of sunset slip behind the trees. Later that evening, as I was brushing my hair in the hallway mirror, a message popped up on my phone. It was from Jolene, my cousin who had always floated on the edge of family drama, never fully in, but never fully out. Her text read, Your mom was spotted at the venue this afternoon. She was asking for the wedding schedule. Staff said she asked about delivery times. I think something's coming. I lowered the phone slowly. I looked into the mirror and didn't flinch. Then let them come, I whispered to my reflection. The sun rose slowly over Flagstaff, casting warm amber light across the botanical garden. I'd barely slept, but when I opened my eyes, there was no hesitation. I knew today was the day everything changed, one way or another. By mid-morning, the venue team was in motion. White chairs lined the garden path. A wooden arch wrapped in lavender and ivy stood tall in front of the mountains. Guests trickled in, guided by staff with quiet smiles and discreet clipboards. In the bridal suite, I sat still as my stylist pinned the last curl in place. I watched my reflection, not for beauty, but for steel. There were no nerves, just focus. Outside, Dorian stood under the arch, his navy suit crisp, his eyes sweeping the crowd. Calm, steady. But he kept checking his watch, like he was waiting for something we hadn't written into the schedule. At 1:12 p.m., Jolene's text buzzed across my phone. She's here, with Kendrick. I didn't blink. My head of security, Marcus, intercepted them behind the garden, near the loading path. Kendrick raised his voice, something about blood and entitlement. Wanda tried a softer tone, said she just wanted a word with me. When that didn't work, she snapped. I'll sue this venue, she barked. You can't keep a mother from her daughter's wedding. Marcus remained unfazed. Your invitation was formally revoked. You're not on the list. You'll need to leave. They didn't argue much after that. They turned and walked off. Or so it seemed. The ceremony began just after 1:30. The harpist plucked a soft melody. Guests turned. The aisle cleared. My Uncle Lawrence took my arm. My heart didn't pound. I just breathed in and stepped forward. 10 steps down the path, everything went still. A hand grabbed my shoulder from behind. I turned, already knowing who it was. Wanda stood behind me, eyes burning, voice low but shaking. You're really going to ruin this family over a pile of money? I didn't step back. I didn't raise my voice. You ruined it yourself. Her hand came fast. A sharp crack echoed through the garden. She slapped me, hard. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped their phone. The harpist stopped playing. For a second, all I could hear was wind in the leaves. I didn't fall. I didn't cry. I stood there, cheek burning, eyes locked on hers. You did that, I said softly, in front of everyone. Kendrick lunged forward, face twisted in anger. Dorian stepped between us in one smooth motion. Touch her and you're done, he said. I raised my hand. No, I told him. Let the law handle this. From the third row, Eleanor, my godmother and a retired school principal, stood up and calmly dialed her phone. Yes, she told dispatch. There's been a physical assault at an event. The location is Whisper Pines Garden venue. Wanda froze. Minutes later, sirens echoed in the distance. 2 uniformed officers entered the venue gate, quietly but directly. They approached us without hesitation. Ma'am, one of them said to me, were you struck? I nodded. Yes, by her. Wanda sputtered. It was a misunderstanding, a private family moment. The officer shook his head. It's also assault. He turned to her. You'll need to come with us. Handcuffs clicked. Guests whispered. Some recorded. Most just stared in stunned silence. As they led her away, I stood unmoving in the middle of the aisle. Dorian stepped beside me, his palm slipping into mine. "You want to stop?" he asked gently. I looked around, at the stunned faces, the quiet horror, and I shook my head. "No, this is our day, let's finish it." The efficient, eyes wide but calm, nodded. "Then we begin again." We did. We said our vows with voices that trembled but never wavered. And when we kissed, the applause wasn't polite. It was thunderous, triumphant. Not because it was a wedding, because it was a victory. As the cheers faded and we turned to face our guests, I glanced toward the back gate. The path was empty now, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled like I meant it. We weren't broken, just rebuilt. The morning after the wedding felt like waking up on the other side of a war. The air outside was crisp and unusually quiet, as if even the wind had decided to give us space to breathe. I wrapped myself in Dorian's flannel robe and stepped out onto the balcony of our small Flagstaff apartment. Steam rose from my mug as I sipped coffee, watching the sun stretch over the pine trees. We hadn't unpacked the gifts. The decorations were still half-boxed in the living room, but none of it mattered. I was finally married, and I was finally free. But peace doesn't last long when your past refuses to let go. 3 days after the ceremony, Jolene called while I was grocery shopping. "I thought you should know," she said, lowering her voice. "Your brother's wedding is being planned at the Ridge." I nearly dropped the lemon in my hand. The Ridge was the most expensive resort in northern Arizona. Private chefs, helicopter photo ops, a spa that charged more per hour than I made in a day when I first started working. "I'm guessing he didn't fund it with sneaker sales," I muttered. Jolene hesitated. "Word is, your parents took out a personal loan. Big one." I didn't reply. I just stared at the checkout line, the woman ahead of me flipping through coupons while her toddler tugged at a balloon. The contrast made me feel sick. That night, I got a text from my father. Just 4 words. "Sorry it went that far." No explanation, no apology, just a limp attempt at cleanup. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my phone's settings and blocked both his number and my mother's. From now on, they could speak to my lawyer, not me. The next blow came subtly but loud. Aunt Corinne posted on Facebook. "There comes a time when protecting someone's failure costs you someone who's always been good." No names, no tags, but everyone knew what it meant. More relatives started declining Kendrick's invitation. Some made excuses, others were blunt. "He's not the man I thought he was." After what they did to Lacey? No thanks. The narrative my parents had tried to control, the loyal family, the good son, the difficult daughter, it collapsed under its own weight. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel smug. I felt done. "They didn't lose me," I told Dorian that weekend. "They threw me away." We had taken a short trip to Sedona, 2 hours away. Just us. No phones, no email, no wedding drama, just space. We stood together on a red rock overlook at sunset. The wind tugged at my hair. My fingers locked in his. "I'm changing my name," I said. "To what?" he asked gently. "Back to my mother's maiden name, from before she stopped being someone I recognized." He nodded. "I'll support whatever helps you feel whole." That night, we stayed in a cabin with no Wi-Fi. I journaled. Dorian read a book by the fireplace. For once, the silence didn't feel like tension. It felt like air. The next morning, over breakfast, I brought up the wedding fund. "There's about $6,000 left after the down payment," I said. "I don't want it sitting there." He raised an eyebrow. "What do you want to do with it?" "There's a nonprofit in Prescott that helps women separate from abusive families. Legal advice, housing, counseling. I want to donate it." He blinked, then smiled. "Turning the damage into purpose." I nodded. "Exactly. Let it end with good." When we got home, I opened my inbox for the first time in days. One email stood out. Subject: "Please talk to me. I miss you." Sender: Marvin Gellner. I stared at it. My heart didn't clench. My hands didn't tremble. I just closed the laptop. Letting go doesn't mean I wish them pain. It just means I don't want to be the one hurting anymore. The sun filtered in through our kitchen window, like it had done 100 times before. But that morning, the light felt different. Gentler, warmer. The kind of light that doesn't demand anything from you. Just quietly says, You made it. Dorian stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, humming something off-key. I leaned against the door frame in an oversized hoodie, barefoot, coffee in hand. Our house still smelled faintly of the wildflowers from our wedding bouquets, now drying upside down in the dining room. It was a modest house, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, on the outskirts of Flagstaff. Just enough yard for a dog we didn't have yet. Enough quiet to hear our thoughts. It hadn't been handed down, gifted, or subsidized. We paid for it ourselves. It didn't come from peace, but we'd built it with peace in mind. There were no more hushed conversations in corners, no more dread each time my phone buzzed, just wood floors that creaked when I walked, a stack of cookbooks I never finished, and a small cactus in the windowsill that leaned toward the morning light. One afternoon, Dorian and I spent hours assembling a bookshelf we'd bought on sale. The screws didn't quite match the holes. We laughed, argued about instructions, laughed again. When it stood, slightly uneven but proud, I said, "That's us, not flawless, just standing." We filled it with books and framed photos from the wedding. I slid my favorite one into the center, Dorian wiping a tear from my cheek just before I said, "I do." My inbox, though, wasn't as peaceful. Wanda hadn't reached out since the ceremony. Not a word. Not even a masked apology. Marvin had. Again. Another short email that read like a scratched record. "Just checking in. Still miss you." I didn't open it fully. I just forwarded it to Kaylin, my attorney, and archived it. Kendrick? He'd gone radio silent too, but the world hadn't. News of his upcoming wedding at the Ridge spread fast, but it wasn't the admiration he craved. A local lifestyle blogger ran a piece exposing the connection between the fund fraud and Kendrick's charity email scandal. One headline hit harder than I expected. From fund fraud to fake vows, the Gellner family spiral social media tore it apart. Comments rolled in by the hundreds. Why would anyone marry this guy? Must be nice faking broke for a living. I didn't gloat. I didn't share. I just closed the tab and went back to watering the succulents near the kitchen sink. One day, while journaling, I wrote something that surprised me. Family isn't who shares your name, it's who guards your soul. I read it twice before underlining it. Then I added, it's who stands with you when it's easier to turn away. Later that week, Jolene and Drema joined me for brunch downtown. We ordered mimosas and laughed until our cheeks hurt. When the bill came, Drema slid it over without a word and paid. She winked. "I'm investing in your next beginning." Dorian surprised me that night. As I came into the bedroom, there it was, a framed print of our wedding vows hanging just above our bed. He'd highlighted one line, "Love doesn't keep score, but it knows when to walk away." I touched the glass and whispered, "Thank you." Not for the frame, for never making me feel like I was too much or not enough. We weren't broken, just rebuilt. The next morning, we drove out to the local shelter, Hope Circle. They'd helped a woman I once mentored get away from an emotionally abusive family situation. That stuck with me. We'd agreed to donate the remaining $6,000 from our wedding fund. Inside the modest building, a counselor greeted us with warm hands and kind eyes. "I can't tell you how much this will help," she said, voice thick with gratitude. "Would you like to leave a message with the donation?" I thought for a moment. Then, steady and sure, I said, "Tell them, healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering who you are, without apology." She nodded, and I felt something in my chest, like a knot finally loosening. As we walked back to the car, Dorian squeezed my hand. "No regrets?" he asked. I smiled. "Only one," I said, "that I didn't let go sooner." Before we end, I want to leave you with this, not as a victim, but as someone who found her voice in the noise. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's this. You don't owe loyalty to pain just because it shares your last name. Family is not who demands from you, manipulates you, or punishes you for choosing yourself. Family is who honors your peace, even when it costs them their pride. And choosing peace, no matter how late, is never weakness. It's wisdom. I share my story not to reopen old wounds, but to help someone else close theirs. So if you're watching this and you're in a space where your boundaries are being dismissed, where love comes with guilt, or where silence feels safer than truth. I hope this reminds you. You're not crazy and you're not alone. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you were told you had to love? What did that decision teach you? Or maybe you're still in that place now, wondering if it's okay to let go. Tell me where you're watching from and drop a 1 inch in the comments if this story touched something real in you. I read everyone. And hey, if this story moved you, helped you reflect, or simply reminded you that healing is possible, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This channel is where real voices find space to be heard, where stories like mine, and maybe yours, matter.
Hi, I'm Nick Thomas, and this is the story of how I discovered that sometimes big betrayals can lead to even bigger wins. In both business and family, the person you trust the most can be the one working against you. But they often don't realize what's beneath their feet before they try to push you off the edge. Let me take you back to where it all started. Thomas Technologies wasn't always the $200 million company it is today. 7 years ago, it was a struggling IT consulting firm my dad had built from scratch. My dad was a genius with technology, but not great at running a business. By 2013, we were 4 months away from going bankrupt, and the stress was taking a toll on his health. I was 27 and fresh out of business school. My older brother, Tony, was 31 and well-known in the local nightlife scene. Dad had always preferred Tony, the charming firstborn who could talk his way out of anything. But charm doesn't pay the bills, and Tony's partying had already cost the company several big clients. I'll never forget the rainy Thursday when I found Dad slumped over his desk, tears in his eyes as he looked at our latest financial reports. "It's over, Nick," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Everything I built. I'm going to lose it all." Something clicked in me that day. I couldn't just stand by and watch my father's dream fall apart, even if he'd always treated me like I was second best. While Tony was out blowing company money at fancy clubs, I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. I started working 20-hour days, learning every part of the business, meeting every client, and reviewing every contract. Mom was worried. "Nick, you need to rest," she'd say, bringing me dinner at midnight. "You can't save the company all by yourself." But that's exactly what I did. The first year was grueling. I worked hard to fix our debt, cut unnecessary costs including Tony's party budget, and personally visited every big client we had lost. Many slammed the door in my face, but I kept going back. Persistence pays off. By the end of that year, we were finally breaking even. Tony found it funny. "Look at little Mikey playing businessman," he'd joke whenever he showed up at the office. "Dad's still going to put me in charge, you know. I'm the oldest." I ignored him and stayed focused. Over the next 6 years, I turned Thomas Technologies from a small IT consulting firm into a full-service digital transformation company. We created our own software, expanded into cloud services, and built a strong reputation in the industry. The company grew fast. Our revenue went from $3 million to $20 million, then to $100 million, and finally past $200 million. Our team grew from 80 people to over 700, and we opened offices in 4 countries. As the company thrived, Dad's health got better, but his favoritism didn't change. Every win was somehow credited to Tony, even though he spent most of his time planning vacations. At family dinners, Dad would praise Tony's business skills, while I quietly reviewed quarterly reports on my phone. I didn't care about getting credit. What mattered to me was the company, our employees, and the legacy we were building. Besides, I had my own plans. What no one knew, not even Dad, was that I had been keeping detailed records over the years. I documented everything, every bad decision Tony made, every client he lost, and every dollar he wasted. More importantly, I built strong relationships with our key clients, making sure they relied on me personally. I had another secret too, one that would prove crucial during tough times. When the company was on the brink of bankruptcy, I had used my own savings and taken out personal loans to keep us afloat. In return, I was given shares, lots of shares. The paperwork was buried in the company's files, but legally, I owned 55% of Thomas Technologies. I thought that would be enough to protect me. I couldn't have been more wrong. Last month, everything changed. Dad announced he was retiring, and everyone thought he would name me as his successor. After all, I had been running the company for years. Even Tony had started showing up to work more often, probably sensing a change was coming. The shareholders' meeting was scheduled for Sunday afternoon. All the key people were there, board members, investors, and major stakeholders. I had prepared a detailed presentation about the company's growth plan for the next 6 years. When Dad stood up to speak, I noticed Tony smirking, but I didn't think much of it. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dad began, "as you know, I'm retiring as CEO of Thomas Technologies. This company has been my life's work, and choosing my successor was not an easy decision." He paused, looking around the room. "But there's only one person who truly has the leadership qualities to take Thomas Technologies to the next level. Someone who understands our family values and has the vision to lead us into the future." I sat up straighter in my chair, ready to accept the responsibility I had worked so hard for. "My son, Tony Thomas, will take over as CEO, effective immediately." The room fell silent. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. But Dad wasn't done. "Furthermore," he continued, "Tony has brought some concerning issues to my attention. It seems certain individuals have been making unauthorized decisions that could harm the company's integrity." Tony stood up, holding a folder. "I'm afraid my brother Nick has been acting outside his authority, making promises to clients we can't deliver on, and possibly engaging in unethical practices." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Every accusation was a twisted version of the truth. The very decisions that had saved the company were being painted as reckless and wrong. As my final act as CEO, Dad said, "I'm terminating Nick's employment with Thomas Technologies, effective immediately." Security guards started walking toward me. Tony looked at me with fake sympathy. "I'm sorry it had to end this way, little brother," he said, smirking. "But hey, maybe now you'll finally have a life outside the office." The room erupted in whispers. I felt numb. Everything I had worked for was being taken away in an instant, and the person I trusted the most was the one behind it all. I was escorted out of the building that day, my key card deactivated, and all my access revoked. Some people looked at me with pity, others with smug satisfaction, but none of them knew what was coming. While Tony was busy scheming against me, he had overlooked 4 critical things. First, those unauthorized decisions he accused me of were all properly documented and approved. Second, my 55% ownership stake wasn't as hidden as they assumed. It was rock solid. And third, when you spend a decade building a company's technology infrastructure, you know every single system inside and out, including all the secrets they think are safely buried. As I walked to my car that evening, I felt the first pang of betrayal, but it quickly gave way to determination. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to an old friend at the SEC. "We need to talk." Then I went home to wait. Saturday morning was going to be unforgettable. Saturday arrived with a thunderstorm, fitting for what was about to unfold. I sat in my home office, coffee in hand, watching the clock as it ticked toward 8:30 a.m., the time Tony would stride into his new CEO office for the first time. Over the weekend, the fallout had been interesting. My mom had called 18 times, leaving tearful voicemails about keeping the family together. Dad didn't call at all. Tony, meanwhile, had been busy partying at his favorite clubs. Social media was plastered with photos of him celebrating his victory, some showing company credit cards clearly on the table. He had no idea the storm that was brewing. Tony always thought technology was beneath him. "That's geek stuff," he used to say, refusing to learn even basic cybersecurity. That arrogance was about to cost him dearly. At exactly 8:50 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Rosalie, my loyal executive assistant. Tony hadn't bothered to fire her, probably assuming she was just a secretary who brought coffee. Her message read, "It's starting." I smiled and opened my laptop. Even though my official access had been revoked, I still had backdoor entry to the company's systems. When you build the infrastructure from scratch, you leave yourself away in just in case. I connected to the internal security feed and pulled up the live camera in the CEO's office. The camera showed Tony walking into the office with a smug grin and a cup of coffee. He dropped into the leather chair, my chair, and pressed the power button on the computer. He looked ready to rule. But instead of the usual Windows login screen, a video started playing. Tony froze as he watched the footage. It was security camera video from 4 years ago. The screen showed Tony sitting in that very office, shaking hands with an executive from our biggest competitor. The audio was crystal clear as Tony detailed the deal. He was selling them confidential client data for a hefty payout. Tony's smug expression quickly turned into panic as the room fell silent. Then, the video cut to more recent footage. Tony using the company credit card for personal expenses, partying at exclusive clubs, and signing off on shady invoices. Meanwhile, in my home office, I calmly sipped my coffee as the chaos unfolded. Tony tried to turn off the computer, but the video kept playing on every screen in the building: laptops, conference room monitors, even the TVs in the cafeteria. Employees stopped what they were doing to watch. Within minutes, my phone buzzed again. It was Rosalie. Security just walked into the CEO's office. I leaned back in my chair and waited for the next part to play out. I had already sent the footage and evidence to the board and key investors over the weekend. My friend at the SEC was also looking into it, and they weren't happy with what they found. By noon, Tony was escorted out of the building, just like I had been, but with a much bigger audience. The difference was I wasn't done yet. This was just the beginning. Tony's voice echoed through the office, panicked and desperate. "I can get you their information. My idiot brother does all the work anyway. Just make sure the payment goes to my Cayman account." He frantically tried to shut off the monitor, pressing buttons and pulling cables, but it was useless. The incriminating video kept playing on every screen in his office. That was just the start of his nightmare. Tony's phone buzzed. The SEC had received an anonymous tip about insider trading, complete with evidence documenting years of his illegal activities. At the same time, his private email account exploded with notifications. Somehow, all his confidential communications had been leaked straight to the board members. Down in the lobby, federal agents walked through the front door. I watched it all unfold from the security feed, a front row seat to the downfall of someone who thought he was untouchable. Tony's expression shifted from confusion to full-blown panic. He tried calling Dad, but Dad's line was busy. Likely because he was learning about his beloved firstborn's shady dealings in real time. The meeting that changed everything. At 9:15 a.m., Rosalie, my loyal assistant, stepped into Tony's office. She remained calm, as if this were just another Saturday morning. "Mr. Thomas," she said politely, "the board is requesting an emergency meeting. Also, federal agents are here to speak with you." Tony, already sweating, snapped, "Tell them I'm busy. Cancel everything and get IT up here to fix these damn computers." Rosalie gave him a small, polite smile. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, sir." Tony froze. "What do you mean?" "The entire IT department has resigned," Rosalie replied, setting a folder on his desk. "They sent a company-wide email explaining their decision. Something about loyalty to the person who actually built this company." "They can't do that," Tony shouted, his voice cracking. "We have contracts." Rosalie gestured to the folder. "Actually, their contracts were with a subsidiary company that holds all of our intellectual property rights, a company that, as of this morning, is no longer affiliated with Thomas Technologies." Tony's hands shook as he opened the folder. Inside was a simple document outlining the ownership structure of Thomas Innovation Labs, a subsidiary I had quietly created years ago. It was the company that owned all the patents, software, and client contracts that made Thomas Technologies valuable. I don't understand," Tony stammered. "I own Thomas Innovation Labs," Rosalie explained. 100% of it. But the clients, Tony's voice trailed off, barely above a whisper. "They've already been informed of the change," Rosalie said smoothly. "Most of them have signed new contracts directly with Thomas Innovation Labs. It seems they prefer working with the person who's actually handled their accounts all these years." Tony's face turned pale as realization dawned. Everything that mattered, the technology, the clients, the employees, was loyal to me. What he had stolen was nothing more than an empty shell. The office door swung open again, and 3 FBI agents walked in, followed closely by Mr. Mark, the company's chief legal counsel. "Tony Thomas," one of the agents said, holding up a badge. We need to ask you some questions about certain financial transactions. Tony shot up from his chair, wild-eyed. You can't do this. I'm the CEO. Not anymore, Rosalie said calmly. The board has already voted to remove you, effective immediately. Tony turned to me on the security feed, realizing I was watching. This isn't over, he shouted, but his voice cracked with fear. The agents cuffed him and began reading his rights. As they escorted him out of the office, I leaned back in my chair, watching it all unfold with a sense of closure. Tony's reign was over, and so was the chaos he had brought to the company. Thomas Technologies, stripped of its true value, was no longer my problem. Thomas Innovation Labs, the heart and soul of what I had built, was ready to thrive under my full control. Sometimes, the best way to win is to let the other side think they've won, until they realize you've already taken everything that matters. I'm in charge here, Tony shouted, desperation thick in his voice. Mr. Mark, the company's chief legal counsel, cleared his throat. Actually, about that, he pulled out a document and handed it to Tony. The board just concluded an emergency meeting. Given the circumstances, they've voted to remove you as CEO, effective immediately. Tony's face twisted in anger. They can't do that. I own this company. Mr. Mark adjusted his glasses and replied calmly, you own shares in Thomas Technologies. However, as of 9:30 this morning, Thomas Technologies has no intellectual property, no major clients, and no core development team. I believe the stock price reflects that reality. Panicking, Tony lunged for his computer, probably to check the stock ticker. But the screen still displayed the loop of videos exposing his illegal activities over the years. His shoulders sagged as the weight of the situation hit him. Moments later, federal agents escorted him out of the building. His designer suit was wrinkled, and his face was pale as whispers and stares followed him out. Watching the live feed from my home office, I drafted one final email to the remaining employees of Thomas Technologies. Subject: A new beginning. To all employees, you have a choice. Stay with a sinking ship or join us at Thomas Innovation Labs, where innovation and integrity truly mean something. Your jobs are secure, your benefits will be better, and most importantly, your hard work will be valued and respected. We look forward to welcoming you to a company that puts its people and principles first. Within an hour, 95% of the staff had accepted the offer. The heart of the company had officially moved on, leaving Thomas Technologies an empty husk. The fallout was swift and brutal. By the next morning, Thomas Technologies stock had plummeted by 80%. Headlines splashed across every major business publication. Tech CEO arrested on fraud charges. Thomas Technologies in freefall as scandal erupts. But I wasn't done yet. 4 days after Tony's arrest, I sat in my sleek new office at Thomas Innovation Labs, a state-of-the-art building I had quietly purchased 7 months earlier. Rosalie walked in with a visitor, Mr. Guillaume, my father's financial advisor. His expression was grave. He's been calling non-stop, Mr. Guillaume began, looking uncomfortable. Ever since your father realized his retirement fund is gone. Because he invested everything in Thomas Technology stock, I finished for him. My father had always bragged about having skin in the game, pouring his entire retirement portfolio into company shares. I had warned him countless times about diversifying, but he never listened. Now, those shares were worth pennies on the dollar. Your father is desperate, Mr. Guillaume continued. Your mother is worried they could lose the house. I leaned back in my chair, the memories flooding in. Every time Dad dismissed my concerns about Tony's behavior, every time he called my hard work luck, and every lecture about how Tony was the leader I could never be. Set up a meeting, I said after a long pause. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. Here. The next morning, my parents arrived at Thomas Innovation Labs. My mother looked like she had been crying, her eyes red and swollen. My father, once proud and confident, looked like he had aged a decade in a week. They sat across from me in the visitor chairs, the same model Dad used to make me sit in during his lectures about leadership. Son, Dad began, his voice shaking, I know I made mistakes. Mistakes, I repeated, my tone measured but firm. Let's talk about those mistakes. He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. You trusted Tony blindly. You ignored every warning I gave you. You dismissed my work, my sacrifices, as luck, and now you want me to fix the mess you let happen? Dad looked down, ashamed. Mom reached across the table, her voice trembling. Nick, please. We don't know what to do. I let the silence hang in the room for a moment, then sighed. I'll help you, I said, finally. But on my terms. They both looked up, a mix of relief and guilt in their eyes. By the end of the meeting, I had worked out a deal. I'd secure their finances, ensuring they wouldn't lose the house. But there was a catch. Dad had to step back completely. No interference, no lectures, no input on how I ran things. As they left the office, I sat back in my chair, staring out the window at the city skyline. For the first time, I felt like I was no longer living in someone else's shadow. Thomas Innovation Labs was mine, a fresh start, built on hard work, integrity, and a vision for the future. And for Tony, he was left with nothing but the consequences of his actions. Sometimes justice takes time, but when it comes, it's worth every second. I spoke calmly but firmly, cutting through the tension in the room. You let Tony destroy evidence of his crimes. You helped him steal company money. You were part of the fraud that hurt our employees, our clients, and our shareholders. I didn't know, Dad tried to protest. You knew, I interrupted. You just didn't care because Tony was your golden boy, and I was just the backup plan. Mom started crying softly. I handed her a tissue and continued, but that's not why you're here. You're here because you're broke. The company shares you were counting on for retirement are worthless. Dad slumped in his chair. Nick, please. We're family. Family? I replied with a humorless smile. Was I family when you let Tony take credit for my work? Was I family when you fired me in front of the entire companies? I reached into my desk and pulled out a folder. Here's what's going to happen, I said, sliding it across the table. Thomas Innovation Labs will buy back your shares in Thomas Technologies at the original price you paid. Their eyes lit up with hope, but I wasn't finished. There are conditions. First, you both sign a non-disclosure agreement about Tony's activities. Second, you retire quietly to that house in New York you've always talked about. And third, you stay out of my business entirely. Mom whispered, You do that for us? Not for you, I said, my voice soft but firm. For the scared 13-year-old boy who used to believe his father hung the moon. He deserved better than what you gave him. Dad opened his mouth to say something, but I raised my hand to stop him. One more thing. The money comes with strings attached, a trustee to oversee it. There'll be a monthly allowance, investment restrictions, and safeguards to make sure you don't gamble it away on another one of Tony's schemes. You don't trust us? Dad asked, his voice heavy with shame. You taught me that lesson well, I said simply. They signed the papers in silence. As security escorted them out of the building, Dad turned back one last time. I was wrong about you, son, he said. You're a better businessman than I ever was. No, Dad, I replied. I'm just better at knowing who my real enemies are. 6 years later. It's been 6 years since that day. Thomas Innovation Labs has grown into a billion-dollar company, known for cutting-edge technology and ethical business practices. Tony served 3 years in prison and now works as a bartender in Jackson, a far cry from the life he once had. Mom and Dad live quietly in New York. Occasionally, they send me postcards, usually with short, polite messages. I keep them in a drawer unread. The scars of the past haven't disappeared, but they've taught me the most important lesson of all. Loyalty and respect must be earned, even from family. I never respond to their postcards. Last week, I got an invitation to speak at my old business school. The topic? The importance of integrity in family business. I couldn't help but smile as I accepted. After all, I have quite a story to share. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about tearing your enemies down. It's about building something so successful that they're forced to live with the regret of betting on the wrong person. And for those who wonder how the quiet one, the backup plan, managed to win it all, well, let me put it this way. While the flashy peacocks are busy showing off their feathers, The eagles are quietly observing, waiting, and planning their next move. Because in business, just like in life, it's not about who starts at the top. It's about who's still standing when the dust settles. My name is Maria. 6 years ago, I married Paul, believing we shared the same dreams and goals. We moved into my luxury apartment on the top floor of a high-rise building with a breathtaking view. I worked as the head of the finance department at a trading company, and my career was taking off. Paul's mother, Lauren, lived nearby and often visited us. From the start, she made it clear she didn't approve of my focus on my career. "A woman's place is at home," she would say, frowning. "You should be taking care of your husband, not running off to work every day." I tried to keep the peace, smiling and nodding when Lauren lectured me about the duties of a good wife. But inside, I was angry. I had told Paul from the beginning that I wanted to focus on my career before starting a family. He had agreed back then, but as time passed, I could see him wavering under his mother's influence. One evening, after a long day at work, I came home to find Paul and Lauren sitting at the dining table, deep in conversation. They went quiet as soon as I walked in, and I felt a chill. "Maria," Paul said with a serious tone, "we need to talk." I dropped my bag and sat down, my heart racing. "What's wrong?" Lauren spoke first. "Maria, dear, we're worried about you. All this work isn't good for you. You're neglecting your home and your husband. When are you going to start thinking about having children?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Lauren, Paul, and I have discussed this. We agreed to focus on our careers first, then think about starting a family." Paul shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Maria, maybe it's time to reconsider. We're not getting any younger, and Mom's right, the apartment is a mess, and I'm tired of eating takeout every night." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Paul, are you serious?"
We talked about this.
"You know how important my job is to me." "More important than your family?" Lauren cut in sharply. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "My job is how I'm building a future for our family." "I thought you understood, Paul," I said before storming out of the room and locking myself in our bedroom. As I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the start of more problems. I had no idea how right I was. The next morning, I left for work before Paul even woke up. As I rode the elevator down to the lobby, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't let anyone, not even my husband, stop me from chasing my dreams. I had worked too hard to get where I was, and I wasn't about to give it all up now. I arrived at the office earlier than usual and stayed late into the night, determined to prove my worth. My dedication didn't go unnoticed. A few hours later, my secretary buzzed in. "Mrs. Michael, the president would like to see you in his office." My heart raced as I made my way to the top floor. Mr. William, our company president, was known for his sharp business skills and for surprising his employees. "Maria, come in," he said when I knocked on his door. "Have a seat." I sat on the edge of the leather chair across from his desk, my hands tightly clasped in my lap. "I've been watching your work closely," Mr. William began, his face unreadable. "And I must say, I'm impressed." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Thank you, sir." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "We're expanding, Maria, merging with a large company from another city. It's a big move, and we need our best people on it." My pulse quickened. Was this going where I thought it was? "I'm planning to promote you," he continued, "to head a new department. But I won't lie to you, Maria. It's going to be tough. You'll have to work harder than ever before. Are you up for it?" I thought about Paul and Lauren, about their expectations of me. Then I thought about all the late nights I had spent going over financial reports and the satisfaction I felt when a project came together perfectly. "Absolutely, sir," I said firmly. "I accept. I won't let you down." As I left Mr. Williams' office, I felt like I was walking on air. This was what I had been working towards all these years. I couldn't wait to share the news with Paul. Surely, when he saw how successful I was becoming, he'd understand why my career was so important to me. On my way home, I stopped at our favorite restaurant and ordered all of Paul's favorite dishes. I picked up a bottle of champagne and a bouquet of roses, feeling excited to celebrate. I wanted to make the evening special. As I juggled the bags and unlocked our apartment door, I called out, "Paul, I'm home, and I've got a surprise." I found him in the living room, lying on the couch with the TV blaring. He barely looked up as I walked in. "Paul, you won't believe what happened today," I said, my excitement overflowing. "I'm getting promoted head of a new department. Isn't that amazing?" Paul muted the TV and turned to me, but instead of the joy I expected, his expression was cold. "So, you'll be working even more now, is that it?" My smile faded a little. "Well, yes, but think about what this means for us. We can afford that big house we've always wanted, take regular trips around the world. Our future is set." Paul suddenly stood up. "Our future? What future, Maria? You're never home as it is. When was the last time we had dinner together? When was the last time we even had a real conversation?" I gestured to the bags I brought home. "That's why I brought dinner. I thought we could celebrate." "Celebrate what?" Paul's voice rose. "Celebrate you choosing your job over our marriage? Celebrate the fact that I married a woman who cares more about her career than having a family?" I felt tears welling up. "I thought you'd be happy for me," I whispered. Paul's face softened for a moment, but then he hardened again. "I can't do this anymore, Maria. Something has to change." With that, he stormed off to his office, slamming the door behind him. I stood in the middle of our living room, surrounded by the things meant for a celebration that would never happen. I felt more alone than ever. As I put away the food and poured myself a glass of champagne, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the price of success? And if it was I willing to pay it? One evening, as I was leaving the office, I had an idea. I could hire a housekeeper, someone to clean the apartment and cook meals. It would solve Paul's complaints about the mess and the lack of home-cooked food. Feeling satisfied with my solution, I made the necessary arrangements. 3 weeks later, I came home to a spotless apartment, with the smell of a home-cooked meal filling the air. I smiled to myself, certain that Paul would be pleased. Then I heard the front door open and close. Paul had come home. I called out, "I'm home, and dinner's ready." Paul walked into the kitchen, looking around at the clean space. "What's all this?" he asked. "I hired a housekeeper," I explained, feeling proud. "She cleans and cooks. I thought it would make things easier for both of us." But instead of being grateful, Paul's face darkened. "So, this is your solution? Hire someone else to do your job?" "That's not fair," I protested. "I'm trying to find a balance." "Balance?" Paul laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call this? Now that you've found someone to replace you in the kitchen, are you planning to find a replacement for yourself in our bed too?"
I felt like he had slapped me.
"How dare you?" I hissed. "I've done nothing but try to make our life better, and this is how you react." Paul turned away. "I'm going out. Don't wait up." The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone in the spotless kitchen, the dinner getting cold on the table. Over the next few days, Paul and I barely spoke. I buried myself in work, focusing on the upcoming merger. It was easier to deal with spreadsheets than the mess my personal life had become. Then, on a rare Sunday when I didn't have to go to the office, I decided to make an effort. I spent the morning cooking Paul's favorite meals, set the table with our best US, and even put on the dress he had bought me for our last anniversary. When Paul came home, I greeted him with a smile. "I thought we could have a nice dinner together," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Just the two of us." Paul looked at me for a long moment and then nodded silently. My heart leapt. Maybe this was the turning point we needed. I was just about to serve the appetizer when the doorbell rang. Confused, I went to answer it, and there, standing in the hallway, was Lauren. "Lauren," I said, surprised. "We weren't expecting you." "Oh, I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "Paul, darling, there you are." I watched in dismay as my carefully planned romantic dinner turned into an impromptu family gathering. Lauren dominated the conversation, slipping in not-so-subtle digs about my housekeeping and lack of maternal instincts. "You know," she said, pouring herself more wine, "in my day, a woman knew her place was in the home. We took pride in taking care of our husbands and raising our children." I stood up quickly. I think it's time for dessert, I said and hurried to the kitchen. As I leaned against the counter, trying to calm down, I could hear Lauren's voice from the dining room. Paul, darling, you need to talk some sense into her. A woman's duty is to her family first, everything else is secondary. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. This wasn't how I imagined my life would be. I had a successful career and a beautiful home. But at what cost? As I listened to Lauren continue talking about traditional family values, I started to wonder if I had made a big mistake somewhere along the way. One evening, I came home later than usual, still thinking about the day's meetings. As I opened the door to our apartment, I froze. Scattered across the living room floor were baby clothes, tiny onesies, little socks, even a small pair of shoes.
Paul.
I called out, my voice shaking. What's all this? He came out of the bedroom with a strange look on his face. Oh, Mom brought those over. She thought it might help you get in the mood. I picked up a small t-shirt, my fingers trembling. In the mood for what, exactly? For starting a family, of course, Paul said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Maria, we're not getting any younger. It's time we seriously thought about having children. I spent the rest of the evening quietly putting away the baby clothes, my mind in turmoil. Was I being selfish? Was my ambition ruining my marriage? The next morning, I woke up to find more baby items placed around the apartment, a rattle on the coffee table, a baby book on my nightstand, a high chair in the kitchen. It was clear Lauren had a hand in this. I tried to ignore them, but every day, there was something new. It felt like the apartment was slowly turning into a nursery, whether I wanted it to or not. One night, I came home to find Lauren sitting on our couch, flipping through a parenting magazine. Lauren, I said, unable to hide my irritation, I didn't know you were coming over. She looked up with a sweet smile. Oh, Maria dear, I hope you don't mind. Paul said I could wait here for him. He's just gone out to get some groceries. I nodded stiffly and went to the bedroom to change. When I came back, Lauren was standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline. You know, Maria, she said without turning around, a view like this is wasted on just 3 people. Imagine how lovely it would be to have a child toddling up to this window, their little hands pressed against the glass, eyes wide with wonder. I felt a headache coming on. Lauren, I appreciate your concern, but Paul and I will decide when we're ready for children, I said. She turned to face me, her eyes hard. And when will that be, Maria? When you've worked yourself into an early grave. When it's too late? I was about to argue, but just then, Paul walked in with grocery bags. He looked between us, sensing the tension. Everything okay here? He asked cautiously. Lauren's demeanor changed instantly. Oh, everything's fine, darling. I was just having a little chat with Maria's about family planning. Paul's eyes lit up. Really? That's great. I knew you'd come around, Maria. I felt cornered and outnumbered. I need some air, I mumbled, grabbing my coat and rushing out of the apartment. A few weeks later, I came home exhausted from another long day at work. The sight that greeted me stopped me in my tracks. Lauren was padding around our living room in fluffy pink pajamas. What's going on here? I demanded, my voice rising with each word. Paul emerged from the kitchen with a defiant look on his face. I've decided that Mom is going to live with us. You're always at work, always away from home. I'm tired of being alone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You decided this without even discussing it with me? When are you ever here to discuss anything?
Paul shot back.
I turned to Lauren, who was watching our exchange with a smug smile. You can't stay here. This is my home. Paul's face darkened. If you're not happy with this arrangement, you can get out. I felt like I'd been slapped. Excuse me? I bought this apartment before we even got married. It's registered in my name. You can't kick me out of my own home. Lauren stood up, her face twisted with anger. She took a step towards me. Now listen here, you ungrateful. I held up a hand to stop her. Don't come any closer, Lauren. If you lay a hand on me, I'll call the police. Lauren's face crumpled, and she collapsed onto the sofa, clutching her chest dramatically. Oh, Paul, she wailed. Did you hear that? She threatened to call the police on me, your own wife. Threatening your mother. That awful job of hers has turned her into a monster. Paul rushed to his mother's side, shooting me a venomous look. How could you, Maria? Your own mother-in-law. I couldn't take it anymore. Without another word, I stormed off to the guest bedroom and locked the door behind me. I had a restless night, tossing and turning as I thought about how crazy the situation had become. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Mr. William, my boss. Maria, I need you on a plane today, he said right away. We're ready to move forward with the merger. I need you in Cleveland ASAP. I packed faster than I ever had in my life. As I wheeled my suitcase to the front door, I was met with the cold stares of Paul and Lauren. I have to go on a business trip, I said, my voice cold. It's for the merger. I'll be back soon. Paul's lip curled. Don't bother coming back at all. The flight to Cleveland was a blur. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. The merger negotiations were intense and took all my focus and energy. But in the quiet moments, alone in my hotel room, the reality of my situation hit me hard. After a grueling week of negotiations and sleepless nights, I finally returned home. As I stood outside my apartment door, suitcases at my feet, I felt both exhausted and anxious. I just wanted to collapse into my own bed and forget about everything for a while. But when I tried to unlock the door, the key wouldn't turn. Frowning, I tried again. Nothing. A cold feeling of dread washed over me as I realized what had happened. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding. After a moment, it swung open. Paul and Lauren stood there in casual clothes, looking at me with smug expressions. Why doesn't my key work? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Paul let out a harsh laugh. I changed the locks, he said, his eyes full of malice. You can come in if you're ready to choose your family over your precious career. I stood there, stunned. What are you talking about? Paul reached into his pocket and pulled out a stack of papers. With a flourish, he handed them to me. Divorce papers, he said. It's time to choose, Maria, your career or your home. What's it going to be? I looked at Paul, really looked at him, and realized something profound. I didn't love him anymore. The man I had married was gone, replaced by this bitter, manipulative stranger. Lauren's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. Well, we're waiting. Make your choice. I took a deep breath and straightened up. I choose my career, I said, my voice steady, because I don't have a family or a husband, not anymore. Paul's face twisted with anger, but he handed me a pen with a steady hand. I signed the divorce papers right there in the hallway. As soon as I finished, Lauren grabbed my arm and roughly pushed me toward the elevator. Good riddance, she spat, slamming the door behind me. I stood there staring at the closed door of what used to be my home. A laugh bubbled up in my chest, almost hysterical. I had just been kicked out of my own apartment, the one I bought with my hard-earned money. Too tired to cause a scene, I gathered my suitcases and made my way to a nearby hotel. A few hours later, I got a call from my friend Janet, a realtor who had helped me buy the apartment. Maria, hon, how are you doing? Janet asked, concern in her voice. I've been better, I admitted. Why do you ask? Janet hesitated. I've seen Paul's posts on social media. He's saying some pretty nasty things about you. My stomach dropped. What kind of things? He's calling you a soulless careerist who destroyed your family for your job. He says he sacrificed everything for your relationship and you just used him and tossed him aside. He's even talking about suing you for alimony. People are really sympathizing with him, Maria. I felt a surge of anger. That's not what happened at all. I didn't think so, Janet said. Want to tell me your side? I gave her a quick rundown of the past week's events. When I finished, Janet was quiet for a moment. Oh, Maria, she finally said. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Listen, I'm going to set the record straight with our friends and colleagues. People need to know the truth. Thanks, Janet, I said, feeling a lump in my throat. I really appreciate that. As I hung up the phone, I felt a mix of emotions: anger at Paul's lies, gratitude for Janet's support, and a growing determination. Paul might have taken my home for now, but I wasn't going to let him take my reputation or my dignity. The vibration of my phone startled me out of my thoughts. Mr. Williams' name flashed on the screen, and my stomach dropped. I took a deep breath and answered. "Maria, we need to talk," Mr. Williams said, his voice unusually serious. "I've heard some concerning things on social media." I closed my eyes, bracing for the worst. "Sir, I can explain." "No need to explain, Maria," he interrupted. "I want to hear your side of the story." Relief washed over me. I took a deep breath and told him everything: the arguments, Lauren moving in, being locked out of my own apartment, and Paul's smear campaign on social media. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, to my surprise, Mr. William chuckled. "Maria, do you really think I believe that nonsense your ex is spreading?" he said. "I know you. I've seen your dedication and work ethic. Don't let this shake your confidence. You have every right to stand up for yourself, and I want you to know that the company stands behind you." Tears of relief welled up in my eyes. "Thank you, sir. You don't know how much that means to me." A couple of days later, my phone pinged with a social media notification. Paul was doing a live broadcast from my apartment. Curious, I tapped on the video. There was Paul, grinning at the camera, surrounded by a film crew. "Hey everyone, exciting news! We're about to start a major renovation on our apartment. The crew from Extreme Makeover Home Edition will be here in 3 weeks to transform this place." I stared at the screen, a plan forming in my mind. Instead of anger, I felt a calm determination. I picked up my phone and dialed Janet's number. "It's Maria. I need a huge favor," I said as soon as she answered. "I need you to sell my apartment fast, like within 3 weeks. Janet let out a low whistle. "That's a tall order, Maria. What's the rush?" I quickly explained about Paul's renovation plans. "I need new owners in there before that film crew arrives." "But Maria, how am I supposed to show the apartment? Paul changed the locks, remember?" "I'll send you the most recent photos I have of the place. They'll have to do." "I know it's not ideal, but..." Janet cut me off with a laugh. "Oh, honey, you underestimate me. I've got a couple who've been looking for exactly this kind of place in this area. They trust my judgment. With these photos and the building's reputation, I think I can make this happen." 3 weeks flew by in a blur of work and anticipation. Before I knew it, the day of the big renovation reveal had arrived. I sat in my hotel room, laptop open, watching the live stream with bated breath. The camera panned across my former apartment, now filled with an excited film crew and construction workers. Paul and Lauren stood in the center, beaming at the cameras. "We're so excited to start this renovation," Paul was saying, his arm around Lauren's shoulders. "It's time for a fresh start, a new chapter in our lives." Just as the host was about to give the signal to start demolition, there was a commotion off camera. The door burst open, and in walked a smartly dressed couple, followed by a familiar-faced Janet. "I'm sorry, but you can't renovate this apartment," the man said, holding up a stack of papers. "It belongs to us now." The camera swung wildly as confusion erupted. Paul's face went from shock to anger. "What are you talking about? This is my home." Janet stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Actually, Paul, this apartment belonged to your ex-wife, Maria. She sold it to this lovely couple 3 weeks ago. Your signature on the renovation documents is a forgery." The host of the show turned to Paul, his face furious. "You forged documents? Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused?" Paul and Lauren's faces turned bright red as the host continued to scold them on live television. The scandal unfolded in real time, with millions of viewers watching as Paul's lies fell apart. I couldn't help but laugh, feeling a mix of vindication and relief. It was over. I had won. With the money from selling the apartment, I made a bold move. I bought a charming little house in the city where our company had just completed its merger. It felt poetic, a new home in the city where my career was taking off. To my delight, Mr. William appointed me as the head of our newly acquired company. It was a challenge, but one I was more than ready for. Weeks later, I faced Paul again, this time in a courtroom. He had the nerve to demand half of the money from the apartment sale, plus alimony. I watched with satisfaction as the judge denied his claims, citing his attempt to take my property unlawfully and the forged documents. As we left the courthouse, Paul approached me, his earlier confidence replaced by desperation. "Maria, please," he begged. "I'm sorry for everything. Can't we start over? Give our marriage another chance." I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just a deep sense of freedom. I laughed, not unkindly, but with finality. "No, Paul," I said, shaking my head. "We can't start over. But I can start anew, and that's exactly what I'm doing." As I walked away, I felt lighter than I had in years. My career was soaring, I was leading a successful merger, and I was respected by my peers and superiors. I had a beautiful new home, one that was truly mine. The air was filled with music and laughter, creating what seemed to be the perfect atmosphere for the happiest day of my life, my wedding day. My name is Shirley, and I stood in my white wedding gown, feeling like a princess, with all eyes on me. I should have been on top of the world, but that joy was short-lived. As I was mingling with my friends, I heard a voice that cut through the happy noise. "Shirley, dear, could you come here for a moment?" It was my mother-in-law, Mrs. Ronald. Her voice was sharp, leaving little room for any refusal. I excused myself from my friends and walked over to her, noticing how stiffly she stood and how tight her smile was. Something wasn't right. "What is it, Mrs. Ronald?" I asked, doing my best to keep my voice polite and respectful. Even though her tone made me uneasy, I didn't want to make things worse. "It's about the way you look at me, Shirley," she said, her voice full of accusations. "I can tell you look at me with contempt. I'm your husband's mother, and I deserve respect, not disdain." Her words caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting this, especially not on my wedding day. "Mrs. Ronald, I think you're mistaken," I replied, feeling confused. "I have nothing but respect for you." "Respect? Ha," she scoffed. "I've seen the way you roll your eyes when I speak, the little sighs. Do you think I'm blind? You've been turning my son against me." Her voice grew louder, and I noticed some of the nearby guests were starting to look in our direction. The situation was getting out of hand. Just then, my husband Paul walked over. "Mom, what's going on here?" he asked, concern written all over his face. "Your wife," Mrs. Ronald said, her voice trembling. "She's been disrespectful to me. She's always looking down on me. And today, on your wedding day, she's been worse than ever." Tears welled up in her eyes, making her look vulnerable. Paul turned to me, his face a mix of disbelief and anger. "Shirley, is this true?" he asked, clearly not sure what to believe. "No, it's not true," I said firmly, feeling a rising sense of injustice. I couldn't believe I was defending myself against such false claims on what should have been a day filled with love and happiness. "I've never disrespected her. She's lying." Mrs. Ronald's voice cracked with emotion as she clung to Paul's arm. "I'm your mother, Paul. Would I lie to you?" she sobbed, making it look as if I was the villain. And then, in a moment that felt utterly surreal, Paul's hand came up, and he slapped me across the face. The sharp sound of his hand against my cheek echoed through the now silent room. I stood there, frozen in shock, my hand instinctively rising to touch my stinging cheek. All around us, the guests who had been celebrating moments ago were now staring at us, their faces reflecting the same disbelief I felt. How had things come to this? 5 minutes, I was celebrating what should have been the happiest day of my life, and the next, I was humiliated and hurt in front of everyone. The slap wasn't just physical, it was an emotional blow that left me reeling. Paul had believed his mother's lies, and in that one action, everything I had felt for him, love, trust, excitement for our future, started to crumble. I wanted to scream, to cry, to disappear from this nightmare. But I couldn't move. All I could do was stand there, my cheek burning, surrounded by a crowd of onlookers who had no idea what to say or do. My dream wedding had turned into a nightmare, and I had no idea how to wake up from it. In that moment, as I stood there, everything changed. The fairy tale I had envisioned for myself was gone, replaced by a harsh reality I hadn't anticipated. And as I looked at Paul, the man who was supposed to love and protect me, I realized that the road ahead would be far more difficult than I had ever imagined. I didn't speak to Paul or Mrs. Ronald, but instead, I whispered to the universe that had allowed this horrible moment to happen. Paul tried to apologize, his voice shaky and full of regret. "Surely I didn't mean to," he started, but I cut him off. "No," I said, my voice calm despite the storm raging inside me. "You've shown me exactly who you are." I didn't need to hear anything else. I felt something shift inside me, something strong and unbreakable. I turned to face the crowd, who had all witnessed the slap and the humiliation. "I'm sorry you had to see that," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Please continue enjoying the celebration. I just need a moment to myself." With that, I walked away, my head held high. I could hear the whispers behind me as people started talking, but I didn't care. I refused to be ashamed of something I hadn't done. This wasn't the end for me. In fact, it was the start of something new. A plan began to form in my mind, a plan for justice. This humiliation would not go unanswered. Once I reached the privacy of the bridal suite, I allowed myself to let go. Tears fell freely down my face, but they weren't just tears of pain. They were tears of strength and determination. I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to be a victim. I was going to fight back. I was going to win. After that horrible incident at the wedding, I knew I had to take action. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator. His name was Mr. Christopher, and he was known for being discreet and effective. I needed his help to gather evidence. I wanted proof of what was really happening in my marriage, and I wanted it done quietly. "Mr. Christopher, I need your help," I said when we first met. "My husband Paul, and his mother, well, they've been less than kind. I think there's more to their behavior than just what people see. I need to know everything." "Understood, Shirley. What are we looking for exactly?" he asked, getting straight to the point. "I need proof of their actions. Anything that shows emotional, financial, or legal abuse. Whatever you can find." "Consider it done," he said, his voice calm and professional. "I'll start with surveillance and background checks. I'll dig into their pasts, their finances, everything." With Mr. Christopher on the case, I started gathering my own evidence too. Every time I spoke with Paul or his mother, I recorded the conversations. I saved every text message, every email. I was building a case, slowly but surely. In the midst of all this, my friend Emma became my biggest support. She was there for me every step of the way. "Emma, I don't know how I'd get through this without you," I told her one evening when everything felt overwhelming. "You don't have to do it alone," she said, squeezing my hand. "I'm here for you always." "What's the plan?" "I'm collecting evidence. Mr. Christopher is helping too. I want to expose them for who they truly are," I said, feeling stronger with her by my side. "Just be careful, Shirley," she warned. "They won't see this coming, and they'll be furious when they find out." "I know," I said, my voice firm, "but I can't let them get away with this." Over the next few weeks, the evidence started piling up. Paul's phone calls became more aggressive and belittling. Financial records showed that Mrs. Ronald had tight control over Paul's money. There were strange transactions in their bank accounts, money being moved around without any clear explanation. One evening, Emma and I sat down to review everything we had found. "Look at these bank statements, Emma," I said, pointing at the screen. "They're moving large sums of money. But where is it going?" "And these emails," Emma added. "They're planning something, but what is it?" "We need to connect the dots," I said, my heart racing. "This is bigger than just emotional abuse. It's a web of lies and manipulation." Emma's eyes widened as she realized what we were onto. "Surely this is huge," she said. "We're uncovering something much bigger than we thought." As the evidence grew, so did my resolve. I knew that I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore, I was exposing the truth, and I wouldn't stop until justice was served. As I dug deeper into the evidence, the situation became clearer. Paul and his mother weren't just difficult people, they were involved in something much worse. They were not only toxic, but also likely doing things that were illegal. "Emma, I think they're embezzling money from Paul's company," I said, showing her the documents I had found. "These papers, they're proof." Emma looked worried. "Surely this is serious. You need to be really careful." They won't be happy when they find out what you know. I know, I replied, feeling the weight of the situation, but I can't back down now. I've come too far. The evidence was strong, not just proving their cruel behavior toward me, but also their shady dealings.
It was clear that it was time to act.
I had to come up with a plan to not only protect myself, but also to bring them to justice for what they had done. Emma, I'm going to expose them, I said, feeling determined. I need to do this publicly, so they can't hide anymore. That's risky, Shirley, Emma warned, but if anyone can do it, it's you. With Emma by my side and all the evidence in hand, I felt stronger than ever. This wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. It was about revealing the truth and seeking justice. I needed the world to know who Paul and his mother really were. The next step was clear. I had to reveal everything. I decided to organize an event. On the surface, it would seem like I was making a big announcement, so I invited friends, family, and even a few media contacts. The event was set up at a beautiful venue, and the atmosphere was buzzing with excitement as people wondered what I was going to say. When everyone had arrived, I stood in front of the room, my voice steady and my face calm. Paul and Mrs. Ronald stood beside me, smiling, unaware of what was about to happen. Thank you all for coming, I began. I know many of you are curious about why we're here today. I'm about to share something important with you. Paul, trying to act supportive, chimed in with a fake smile. Shirley, darling, we are so proud of you. Whatever this announcement is, we're behind you 99%. His words dripped with insincerity, and I couldn't wait to wipe that smug smile off his face. I took a deep breath. I've brought you all here to reveal some truths about my marriage and the Ronald family. I paused, noticing the room fall silent, everyone waiting to hear what I would say next. Mrs. Ronald's smile started to falter, and she looked at me, unsure. Truths? What are you talking about, Shirley? She asked, her voice shaking a little. I'm talking about the lies, the abuse, and the illegal activities that have been happening behind the scenes, I said. The tension in the room grew thick. You could feel the shock spreading through the crowd. Have you lost your mind? Paul's face turned bright red, his anger barely under control. No, I said firmly. In fact, I've never been clearer about what needs to be done. I turned to the large screen behind me and signaled for the video to play. It was a recording of one of the many conversations where Paul and Mrs. Ronald had treated me horribly. The audio echoed through the room, and the guests gasped. People started whispering as the truth came out. Mrs. Ronald's face went pale, and her hands started to shake. She looked terrified. And this is just the start, I said, holding up a folder filled with documents. These papers show financial irregularities, including embezzlement and fraud. There's no hiding from this. Paul's voice cracked as he desperately tried to stop me. You can't do this, Shirley. You're ruining everything. I looked him straight in the eye and said, I'm not ruining anything. You did this to yourself. The truth was out in the open, and there was no turning back now. I had taken my first step toward reclaiming my life. I stood before the crowd, determined to expose the truth, a truth everyone needed to see. As I spoke, the media personnel began clicking their cameras, capturing every moment of the unfolding drama. The sound of shutters clicking filled the room, but I stayed focused. Shirley, please, let's talk about this privately, Mrs. Ronald whispered, her voice trembling. Her usual calm and controlled demeanor was completely gone. No, Mrs. Ronald, I replied firmly. No more private discussions. The time for hiding is over. I continued sharing the evidence I had gathered. The room filled with gasps, shocked faces, and whispers as I exposed more of what had been hidden for so long. Some guests shook their heads in disbelief, while others leaned in to whisper to those around them. I could feel the energy in the room shifting as the truth started to sink in. Paul and Mrs. Ronald stood still, frozen in place, their carefully crafted images crumbling before everyone's eyes. This is my story, I said, my voice steady. A story of surviving abuse and standing up against injustice. I refuse to be a victim any longer. As the event came to a close, the room buzzed with activity. Reporters swarmed me, asking questions, their microphones and cameras in my face. Many of the guests came up to me, offering words of support and admiration for what I had done. I smiled politely, but inside, I felt something much deeper, a sense of relief and strength. As I walked away from the podium, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders.
I had done it.
I had exposed them, keeping my composure and staying in control the entire time. This was my moment of triumph, a moment where I reclaimed not just my voice but my power. The next big step came in the courtroom. The room felt cold and serious, a place where justice would be served. I sat there, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. My lawyer sat beside me, prepared and ready to fight. Across the room, I saw Paul and Mrs. Ronald. They looked unsettled, far from the confident people they once were. Your Honor, we are here today to present the case against Paul and Mrs. Ronald. My lawyer began, his voice clear and strong. This is not just a divorce case. This is about years of emotional and financial abuse. Paul leaned forward, his face pale. Shirley, you can't win this, he whispered across the room, his voice full of desperation. You're going too far. I turned to him, calm but firm. This isn't about winning, Paul. It's about justice. It's about revealing the truth and showing the world who you really are. The trial moved forward, and my lawyer presented all the evidence I had gathered, the recordings, the financial documents, everything that showed the reality of what I had lived through. Piece by piece, the truth was laid out for everyone to see. The judge listened carefully, taking in every word, while Paul and Mrs. Ronald sat there, looking more and more defeated. Your Honor, as you can see, the evidence is clear and overwhelming, my lawyer said as he wrapped up the presentation. We are seeking not only a divorce, but also appropriate legal action for the wrongs committed by Paul and Mrs. Ronald. Mrs. Ronald tried to defend herself. Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding, she said, her voice shaky. Shirley is exaggerating. But her words sounded empty, even to herself. The evidence was undeniable. It spoke louder than any excuses she could offer. Exaggerating? I replied, looking directly at her. The evidence speaks for itself. You can't hide from the truth anymore. In that courtroom, I felt the same strength I had felt when I exposed them in front of the crowd. This wasn't just a fight for myself anymore, it was a fight for justice. And I knew, as I sat there, that the truth would finally prevail. I spoke my final words, directed at both Paul and Mrs. Ronald, a firm statement of my stand against them. The judge, after carefully reviewing all the evidence and hearing the testimonies, made her decision. In light of the overwhelming evidence, she said, I grant the divorce and order legal actions against Paul and Mrs. Ronald for their conduct. As the gavel struck, a wave of relief washed over me. I had done it. I had stood up to them and won. After everything I had been through, I finally felt a sense of victory and justice. The long battle was over, and I could now focus on moving forward. With the legal battles behind me, I began a new chapter in my life. It was time to heal and rebuild. I found a small, quiet place in the countryside far away from the chaos and pain of my past. My new home was peaceful, surrounded by nature and calm. It was the perfect place to start fresh. One afternoon, I sat on the porch of my new home, holding a warm cup of tea in my hands. The gentle breeze made the trees sway, and I could hear birds singing in the distance. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. There was no more stress, no more manipulation, no more lies. Just me and the quiet beauty of the world around me. This was the new beginning I had been waiting for. A life free from all the hurt and control I had endured. My journey to get here had been hard, filled with pain and struggle. But it had been worth it. I didn't just survive, I thrived. I found my strength, reclaimed my voice, and now I was finally free. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden light across the horizon, I knew that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The future ahead of me was unknown, but that didn't scare me. It was mine to shape, filled with hope, healing, and happiness. This was my story of triumph, the story of a woman who refused to be silenced, who stood tall against all odds. This was my closure, my victory. The journey had been tough, but I had come out on the other side, stronger than before. Now, the story of Shirley's journey had reached its end, a story of standing up for myself, exposing the truth, and finding freedom. Do you think Shirley's decision to expose and legally confront her husband and his mother was the best choice? Could there have been another way to handle this difficult situation? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you like this story and want to hear more like it, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Your support helps us bring more stories to life. Hello, my name is Kelly, and I'm 32 years old. I want to talk about something that happened recently, which helped me through a difficult time with my husband, Kyle, and his family. This situation occurred a few months ago. While things have settled down now, I am still processing everything emotionally. I believe sharing my story might help me feel better and bring some healing. Let me take you back about 4 years to when I made a life-changing decision to marry my boyfriend, Kyle. We had been dating for 4 wonderful years before tying the knot. Kyle was everything I could have hoped for in a partner. He was fun, caring, and incredibly loving. He also came from a wealthy family and had a great job, which allowed him to spoil me with gifts and show his affection in generous ways. One thing we both loved to do together was travel. Exploring new places brought us closer and strengthened our bond. When I shared the news of our relationship with my friends, they were genuinely happy for me. They often told me how lucky I was to have found someone like Kyle. Kyle's generosity stood out, sometimes even to a surprising degree. For instance, when I graduated from college, he bought me a brand new laptop as a gift. While I appreciated his kindness, I sometimes felt uneasy about not being able to spend as much on him as he spent on me. I would tell him, "Kyle, I'm just a college student. I can't afford to match your spending. Maybe we could split other costs instead." But Kyle would always insist on treating me, saying it was something his friends did for their partners too. Over time, I got more comfortable with his generosity, but I still made an effort to contribute as much as I could. Later, when I landed a good job, we started splitting expenses more evenly. We even began talking about moving in together, which felt like a big and exciting step forward in our relationship. One day, Kyle suggested, "Why don't you move in with me? I inherited my house from my grandpa, so you won't have to worry about paying rent. But we can split other expenses to keep things fair." This made a lot of sense to me, and I appreciated how thoughtful he was about making the arrangement balanced for both of us. These moments shaped the beginning of our life together. While we faced challenges later on, which I'll share another time, these early experiences with Kyle reminded me of the love and care that brought us together. It's not always easy to navigate life's ups and downs, but reflecting on our journey helps me remember the strength of our bond. Sharing this story is my way of healing and finding peace with everything we've been through. I wasn't sure about moving in with Kyle, but he reassured me that everything would work out. We agreed to share financial responsibilities in a way that was fair, considering our different incomes. At first, things were going smoothly. However, everything changed when I met Kyle's family. Kyle's parents and sister lived far away, so when they came to visit, I had to host them on my own because Kyle was busy with work. Before their visit, Kyle warned me that they could be a bit judgmental, but he didn't give me much detail. He told me to ignore any hurtful comments and stay calm. I tried to stay positive, hoping everything would go well. But when they arrived, my optimism quickly faded. From the moment they stepped into our home, Kyle's parents and sister didn't seem happy to see me. Instead of a friendly greeting, they looked annoyed. The atmosphere felt tense, and it became clear during our conversations that they didn't like me. Kyle's mom, Julie, wasted no time showing her disapproval. "So, you're the woman Kyle has been seeing," she said in a tone that felt more like an accusation than a question. The situation got worse when Julie questioned me about living in the house. "Do you even pay rent?" she asked sharply. I explained politely, "No, I don't pay rent." Kyle told me the house is fully paid for, but we split all the other bills evenly. I hoped this would clear things up, but Julie didn't seem satisfied. "Just because the house is paid for doesn't mean you can mooch off him," she snapped. This is his house, not yours. Remember that for the rest of your life. Her words stung, and the conversation became even more uncomfortable. Kyle's sister, Samantha, was no better. She barely spoke to me, and mostly just gave me cold glares. When I tried to ask her about her life, she mentioned being married to a wealthy billionaire and then brushed me off as if I wasn't worth her time. Throughout their visit, Kyle didn't defend me. In fact, he often seemed to agree with his family. Julie and Kyle's dad kept criticizing me, making the entire visit incredibly stressful. They disapproved of my spending on things like makeup and skincare, saying it was wrong because they believed I wasn't contributing enough financially. Their words hurt, especially since I did my best to split the bills fairly and take care of our home. Even Kyle's comments didn't help. He would casually mention things like, Kelly was a struggling student when we first met, in a way that made me feel small and judged. Instead of supporting me, Kyle's words made me feel even more isolated. Looking back, hosting his family alone was one of the hardest things I've had to do. Their visit left me feeling unwelcome and undervalued, and it changed how I saw my relationship with Kyle and his family. I depended on Kyle a lot in the beginning, or at least that's what his family believed. Kyle made comments that supported their assumptions, saying things like how he had to pay for everything early in our relationship because my job didn't match my supposed taste for luxury. Hearing this shocked me. I reminded him that we now split all our bills equally. I also explained that I had always lived a simple life, both before and during our relationship. Any luxury items I owned were gifts from him, and I had often asked him not to buy those because they were too much. Kyle tried to justify his spending, saying his social status required him to give fancy gifts. It became clear that many of his generous gestures were more about impressing others than caring for me. This realization hurt, but I kept my feelings to myself at the time. After his family left, I decided to confront Kyle about the way they treated me. I told him how hurt I felt by their constant criticisms and disrespect. Unfortunately, Kyle brushed it off. "Don't take it to heart, Kelly," he said. "They meant well. You're just overreacting." His dismissive response made me feel unsupported, but I didn't push the issue further. Despite my doubts about his family's feelings toward me, Kyle proposed 6 months later, and I happily accepted. We started planning an engagement party, and this time we agreed to split the costs evenly. At the time, I was running a small side business. It didn't make a lot of money, but it was something I enjoyed doing. Kyle knew about it, but never showed much interest. To me, it was more of a fulfilling hobby than a major income source. When it came time to organize our engagement party, I decided to treat myself a little. Kyle supported this idea, and we worked together to plan a beautiful celebration. I even covered the cost of plane tickets for my extended family to attend, which felt like a big accomplishment for me. The party turned out to be lovely, but as usual, Kyle's family couldn't resist criticizing me. During the celebration, Julie said, "You shouldn't have spent so much on this party, Kelly. You're draining Kyle's account before you're even married. At this rate, you'll end up with a backyard wedding." Her words stung. Then she added, "I thought you were just financially irresponsible, but it's worse than I thought." This time, I stood my ground. I calmly told her, yes, the party was extravagant, but Kyle and I both agreed to it, and we shared the costs. Despite my efforts to explain, Julie refused to see my side. That day made me realize how little they respected me and how much I would have to fight to be accepted in their family. It also made me question how much Kyle truly supported me in difficult situations. I paid my share for the engagement party, and it was actually Kyle's idea to include everyone. He insisted on inviting the entire family and said he didn't mind the expense. Still, the criticism kept coming. Julie accused me of manipulating Kyle into spending too much money. Samantha joined in, saying I should have been more considerate of the costs. Feeling frustrated and overwhelmed, I excused myself and went outside to the lawn, hoping to find some peace. But even there, I couldn't escape. I overheard Samantha and her husband, Jordan, laughing at me. It felt like my engagement party, which was supposed to be a happy occasion, was falling apart. Kyle seemed unaware of how harsh his family was being, or maybe he just didn't want to acknowledge it. Most of Kyle's extended family thought I was jobless and completely dependent on him. This wasn't true, but it hurt to know they saw me that way. My mom noticed how upset I was and pulled me aside. She gently suggested that I rethink the engagement, considering how mean Kyle's family had been to me. After the party, I confronted Kyle about everything, explaining how hurt I was by his family's constant judgment. But he brushed it off, saying they were only joking and that I shouldn't take it seriously. He told me he loved me and assured me that financial matters didn't bother him. Still, I told Kyle I wanted to contribute more, especially toward the rent, to show his family that I wasn't taking advantage of him. But he dismissed the idea, saying it wasn't necessary. As we began planning the wedding, the stress only grew. Kyle's parents continued to criticize me, accusing me of trying to bankrupt their son. Their constant scrutiny made the entire engagement period feel incredibly stressful. I tried to explain that everyone, including my mom, was helping with the wedding expenses. Despite this, Julie accused me of taking advantage of Kyle and called me a gold digger. I told Roger, I'm not asking for any financial help. We're financing the wedding ourselves. But no matter how much I reassured them, they didn't believe me. Even on the wedding day, Samantha criticized the cost of my dress and makeup, even though my mom had paid for those expenses. The wedding ceremony itself went smoothly, and for a moment, I felt relieved. But at the reception, Julie and Roger started up again. They accused me of being careless with money and financially exploiting Kyle. Their words hurt deeply, especially because they were so untrue. Despite their harsh criticism, I tried to focus on the happiness of marrying Kyle. But their constant negativity lingered, making it difficult to fully enjoy the day. I realized that even though I loved Kyle, being part of his family was going to be a challenge. I stayed quiet on our wedding day to keep it special, despite everything that had happened. A few months later, Kyle got a big promotion at work and wanted to celebrate with a family dinner. I was so proud of him and decided to cover all the expenses myself. Kyle, I want this dinner to be amazing, I told him. I'm so proud of you and want to celebrate your success. Kyle appreciated the gesture. I told him that my business was doing well, I had a stable income from my job, and I had recently accessed a trust fund left to me by my grandfather. I carefully planned every detail of the event, wanting it to be perfect for him. When the dinner day arrived, I was nervous but excited. Most of the guests were thrilled with the arrangements and complimented how wonderful everything looked. But Kyle's family was different. They seemed unhappy no matter what I did. Their disapproving looks and whispered comments made it clear they didn't approve of the celebration's lavishness. Things took a turn for the worse during the speeches. Julie, Kyle's mom, stood up and addressed the room. At first, her tone seemed warm as she thanked everyone for coming to celebrate her son's achievement. But then, her words turned harsh. Kyle is hardworking and generous, and he truly deserves this promotion, she began. Unfortunately, he made a poor choice in his partner. It's sad that he ended up with someone who acts like a gold digger. If he had seen her true nature earlier, he wouldn't have to work so hard to support her expensive lifestyle. I was stunned. My heart sank as Julie continued speaking. Her voice was filled with regret as she said, "It's clear to everyone here that his wife has been very extravagant, from the engagement party to tonight's dinner. She has almost drained his accounts." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. I wanted to defend myself, but knew it would only escalate the situation. Julie didn't stop there. "Thank goodness we had Kelly sign a prenuptial agreement before the wedding," she added with a smug tone. "At least some of his assets are protected." Her words were like a punch to the gut. She even made a sarcastic comment about how I could, at least, look like a trophy wife. What hurt the most was that Kyle didn't say anything to defend me. Instead, he agreed with his mother, making me feel completely unsupported. I felt humiliated in front of everyone at the dinner. All I had wanted was to celebrate Kyle's success and show how proud I was of him. Instead, the evening turned into another moment where his family attacked me and Kyle didn't stand by my side. I realized then that no matter how hard I tried, I would never be good enough for his family, and Kyle's silence made me question if I was even good enough for him. I had reached my limit. Kyle stood in front of me, accusing me of draining his finances. "I can't even afford to spend money on myself anymore because of you," he said. His words cut deep, but what hurt the most was when he called marrying me a mistake. He even compared me to others in a way that made me feel small and unworthy. I was shocked and frustrated, and for the first time, I couldn't stay silent. "Do you really think I'm a gold digger?" I asked, my voice trembling. Kyle's response was harsh and dismissive. "Your lifestyle is damaging to my bank account." His words stung, but they also made me determined to prove myself. "If you all think I'm a gold digger," I said firmly, "then let me show you the truth." In front of everyone, I revealed my bank account balance, proving my financial independence. The room went silent as the disbelief spread across their faces. Julie, unable to accept the truth, accused me. "Did you steal my son's money?" Kyle added fuel to the fire, saying, "You must have taken it from me." I stayed calm despite the hurt. "I don't need to steal from your son," I replied. "This money is my own. I've worked hard for it, and I recently accessed a trust fund from my grandfather." I went on to explain that I had been planning to use that money to buy a bigger house for us. "But now," I said, "that plan seems impossible." Kyle tried to turn things around, suggesting we could still buy the house. "It'll be a wonderful gift," he said, trying to smooth things over. But I had had enough. "No, this is not happening," I said firmly. "Your family has insulted me for far too long, and you've never stood up for me. Instead, you've let them spread lies about me and humiliate me." Kyle tried to dismiss my concerns, saying I was overreacting. But I wasn't backing down. "No, Kyle," I said, my voice steady. "I am not overreacting. Everyone here knows what your family has been saying about me. They were here when you let them insult me during our engagement party." At that moment, I reached my breaking point. The constant disrespect, the lack of support from Kyle, and the relentless criticism from his family, it was all too much. I couldn't take it anymore. "I want a divorce," I said, my voice firm and unwavering. Kyle tried to plead with me, but before I could respond, my mom stepped in. "You never defended my daughter," she said firmly. "It's time she ends this toxic relationship." With that, I walked out of the party, leaving behind a room full of shocked guests. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing up for myself. I was done tolerating the disrespect. I was firm in my decision to leave Kyle and move on with my life. My mom stood by me without hesitation as we left, marking the end of a painful chapter. Her support was exactly what I needed during such a tough time. After the confrontation, I went back to the house I shared with Kyle, packed my belongings, and moved in with my mom for comfort and safety. The next day, I reached out to my cousin, who is a lawyer, to start the divorce process. Because of the prenuptial agreement, the process was straightforward. I didn't have to share my assets with Kyle, which was a relief. Things escalated quickly when Kyle and his family showed up at my mom's house, demanding to talk. My mom stood her ground and told them to leave. Kyle kept trying to contact me, switching between apologizing and threatening me. I saved all his messages in case I needed to file a restraining order. My mom's unwavering support gave me the strength to stand firm. At one point, Kyle even tried to confront me at my workplace. Thankfully, security stepped in and escorted him out. That incident made me realize it was time to let go of my job, especially since my growing business was doing well. I resigned that very day, ready to focus on my future. 2 weeks later, I served Kyle the divorce papers at his workplace. Soon after, he went to my old office, only to find out that I had resigned. He started sending flowers and gifts to my mom's house, but we returned them all. His continued attempts to reach me felt like harassment, and I began to think about relocating for a fresh start. With my mom's encouragement, I found a new house in a neighboring state. It was a peaceful, safe space where I could rebuild my life away from Kyle. While waiting for the divorce to be finalized, I focused on healing and preparing for the next chapter of my life. The divorce process took about 6 months, but it went smoothly thanks to the prenuptial agreement. During that time, I settled into my new home and changed my phone number to avoid Kyle's messages. I worked on my business, surrounded myself with positive people, and started to feel more like myself again. Although the journey was difficult, moving forward felt like a breath of fresh air. I was finally free from the toxic environment I had endured, and I was proud of myself for taking control of my life. My mom's constant support reminded me that I deserved peace and happiness. This was the start of a new, brighter chapter, and I was ready to embrace it fully. I heard that Kyle's life started to fall apart after our breakup. He blamed his parents for everything that happened between us and began facing problems at work. His colleagues started keeping their distance from him, and his seniors were unhappy because the situation brought negative attention to their company. To make matters worse, Kyle's parents tried to spread rumors about me, claiming I was unfaithful. However, those rumors didn't go anywhere because they weren't true, and people didn't believe them. In contrast, my life began to improve in so many ways. I focused all my energy on growing my business, and it flourished. I finally had the freedom to do what I wanted without the constant stress and criticism I had experienced before. With time, I started dating again, but I took things slow. I was careful about who I let into my life, but I stayed hopeful that I would find someone who truly valued and respected me for who I am. Even though Kyle caused me a lot of pain, I realized that going through those challenges made me a much stronger person. I learned how to stand up for myself and gained a clearer understanding of what I wanted in a relationship and in life. Looking ahead, I felt excited and optimistic about the future. I was confident in my ability to overcome any obstacles and knew that I deserved a partner who treated me with kindness and respect. I had grown so much from the experience and was ready to embrace the brighter days ahead.